Luis, you had
and we need to keep in mind that endorsements are not only the traditional editorial boards of the traditional newspapers. I'm not young, but I personally go for opinions, not at the papers, not at the New York Times or the Washington Post. I go to some bloggers that I have kept track of them, and I respect the way that they think or the way they approach, not the political thinking. And that's what younger people, even much younger than I am, they go. And the endorsement of chat rooms, that's key in new electoral process. They don't go to the traditional paper media. They go to the new media, and those kind of endorsements when come from people that like bloggers that they look like me are more important in new electoral process.
Also, I wanted to say one of the questions that we get in our office all the time is, where do I find out information about these candidates? I don't know them, just like Miguel said. We don't know who these people are. The fact that media, certain media like the news press would give backgrounds, bios, credentials, that sort of thing, I think is very, very important for the general public to at least get an idea of who these people are, where they come from, what their backgrounds are, what their qualifications as an elected official might be. And without that, it would be very difficult for a lot of our voters to make educated choices.
I think there's a tougher question out there, and that is, should a political party endorse one of their candidates? Now here you have a political party, regardless of which one it is, and they have 3, 4, 5, 6 different candidates that are a candidate from that party. Should the party be endorsing that candidate? I mean, one of their candidates to the disadvantage of the others? That's a real interesting question. I'm totally against it, but that's my own opinion. I think that's a more explosive question in this day and age.
Well, recognizing that our time is short, we won't get into that long.
That could be an all day.
And I want to apologize in advance that we're only going to have about 10 more minutes of questions because we need to screen the film, but I'm going to try to get through as many of them as possible, and then our panel would assist me by keeping their responses succinct. I think that'll help. One question that we have here deals with the January 2008 primary. The question is, of the approximately 17,000 Hispanics registered to vote, eligible voters, January 2008 primary, only 4,000, or less than 3%, actually cast ballots. On the contrary, over 50% of the general electorate registered to vote cast ballots. Why such a disparity between Hispanic voters and the rest of the community?
I'm not exactly sure. I can kind of give you a theory on it. Excuse me. But when their legislators changed the date of the primary and moved it back, a lot of people just felt because of that and the controversy with the parties, saying, well, the Republican Party said we're only going to be able to seat 50% of the delegates at the convention. The Democratic Party said we're not seating any of them. I think it discouraged a lot of people from getting out there and casting their vote. As many times as I was on camera and I told the general public through the media, even if they don't seat the delegates, the rest of the delegates who are going to that conference or that convention are going to look and see what did Florida do in January. How did the people that voted feel about various candidates? Even though the delegates may not have been seated, the other delegates were going to be looking at, okay, how are we going to come out with this election if we go one way or the other? So I encouraged everybody, regardless of whether they felt their delegates were going to be seated or not, to get out there. But I think a lot of people were very disgruntled. I know they were, because I heard about it. I said I didn't set the date, but I took the comments. But they were disgruntled. They were very disappointed. They said, our vote's not going to make any difference. We can't seat our delegates. And I think it turned a lot of folks off in general.
Miguel, Luis, I'm interested in your perspectives as well from the candidates and the business perspective. Why didn't Hispanics vote? Is that atypical or?
No, I only say that besides the thing that the conventions and what you said, the change on the electoral system increased the distrust of people about voting. I would say just that.
I don't have anything to add. I think it's exactly as Sharon is indicating. I think that there was a negative message out there, and that did factor.
Sharon, I have a quick factual question. Do you know of the Hispanic population in Lee County, in the greater Southwest Florida community, how many are of age to vote? Any idea?
That would have to be a census.
Well, I guess as we sort of want to start to close our discussion with this question, and it's really the reason why we're all here and the reason why we organized this forum. I think it's the number one question, not that all these other questions aren't important, but how do we get the million or so Hispanics in the Southwest Florida area or more, million plus, to register to vote and then vote? How do we do
From
that?
a candidate's perspective, I think you've got to find a way to give them a reason to vote. It's really what it boils down to. If you can't motivate people to get registered and to actually cast a vote, because there's two different things. If you can't motivate people to, even if they're not allowed to contribute to your campaign, to help out in certain ways, if you can't get people to get your literature distributed at their work, at their church, at their social functions, if you can't get people to put a sign in their front yard, then you're going to have a tough time. You're going to have a tough time, and I think it's a two-way street. I think that Hispanics, by the same token, if they want to have more political clout, they have to start participating. They have to start contributing, and most importantly, they have to start voting. Because until they do that, they're not going to be paid attention to. Not given the respect, dare I say, you candidates out there, not going to be given the respect that they need to be given until they start voting, until they can become a factor.
Luis, I'm interested in your perspective as well. How from a marketing perspective, do you get Hispanics to register to vote and along that same vein, do you have any suggestions to offer our supervisors of election, our candidates?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 things. One is the role of trade associations, neighborhood associations, those kind of civic groups, helping in constant basis, not only when it's time to vote, but throughout the time, helping in educating the people and making them participate. For instance, when you realize that, let's say, the council or any group, the chamber, could bring 20 members, and they are paid for the electoral, for volunteer as a poll worker, and let's say they raise $1,200, and they go to something charity. That's a good and fun way to make people aware of what is the process about. So I think those associations should have a more active role in getting their members used to the electoral process. The other thing is issues. I believe that as closer the issues are, or local are to people, it is easier to get them not to participate on the electoral processes. National issues are most probably not portrayed as most important. But when you say that this year the schools are going to be out of budget, that touches us directly. So if you kind of, not because some issues are more important than others, but if you educate people about the importance for their practical day-to-day lives or certain local issues of how it's important for them to participate, why it's important for them to participate, it's a step-by-step process to get them involved. And education. It's not only about the, because for instance, the amendments, you need a PhD to read some amendments. Look, I'm Hispanic, and I very young age learned something that think twisted and you right. If you suspect that there is a trick on the on the way that the reading of the
ballot issue.
The ballot is, you said that this is twisted. Why they don't run this straight forward? If you have to know double negatives, there is something wrong, and that doesn't help. And that's not only Hispanics. I read I heard very educated people saying, "What the hell is this? You need a PhD."
It's like a state examination.
Exactly.
State examination.
Yeah, that doesn't help. So the system is not doing good. I know that I feel that some of those texts are politically motivated, and that's bad for the ballot, because people tend to say, okay, in case of doubt, don't do anything because you're going to be tricked. So that's not the Hispanics, that's not the people. It's the way that the system, politicians, I don't know who, but it doesn't help. So education, information, and somehow to compare, because to be honest, I didn't understand a study in terms of what is the difference between immigrants, Hispanic immigrants and non-immigrants in terms of party affiliation. I read something and it was kind of confusing, the information, but I understood that immigrants are more inclined to be independents. Yeah. No party affiliation. So that's something in terms of, if you go in terms of education, you need to be Republican, you need to be Democratic. That doesn't help. You need to make your decision, probably help much better. So those are kind of things, the local issues, the constant participation, and the education in terms of sometimes even comparing this system with your country of origin system, that helps to understand why it's important to participate.
And then I'd like to conclude, Supervisor Harrington, with your perspective on, you talked to us about what you've been doing, and we've heard from Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Bernal. I think they've offered some suggestions. Want to get your perspective on what has been effective in getting Hispanics to register to vote, what hasn't been, what's been ineffective, what more do you think can be done?
The whole question is extremely interesting, and I think of all the things that I am charged with doing, educating the public is one of the hardest things. The second hardest thing is actually getting them out to vote. Prime example of what I was talking about earlier, if there are issues that affect the people, or if there are candidates that they feel will address those issues, they're going to go out and vote. Voter apathy is a very difficult thing for me to control. This is a prime example in today's society of that whole thing. It's touching everybody. There are issues out there that's affecting everybody. I can't, as an office or as an individual, make people go and vote. My job is to give them every opportunity, which we already do. Ballots by mail, early voting, at the polls on election day, that opportunity is there. That's my responsibility, and that's what I'm entrusted to do. And we certainly have done that, definitely stepped up to the plate this time. But it's getting people involved in the process. The fact that you are a poll worker, you are setting an example for your community of getting involved. Miguel running as a candidate is showing involvement, and we need to start encouraging more of that, more involvement from people who are already excited. We've got to kind of spread that excitement. Continuing our community outreach programs. People like Israel Suarez making a goal to register so many more Hispanics and actually going out there and doing it. Of course, we were right there working with them, making sure that the people that were going out and registering people were doing it properly. We don't want people out there doing a bunch of registration drives and then the information gets to us and it's not complete and that person still isn't registered. So, and then they get disgruntled and they don't trust the system. So working with those community outreach programs. Again, going out into the community rather than waiting for the community to come to us has been extremely successful in the last 4 years, and we will certainly continue to do that. We want to be able to emote trust. We want people to understand that their vote's going to count. We want them to understand it doesn't make any difference what nationality they are, what persuasion they are. We don't care. We don't care what the party is. We're so neutral in our office. We're white. Or tan, I should say. But we want people to trust the system. And the only way to do that is to educate them. I've often thought of doing a workshop. I was very fortunate to attend what they call the Citizens Academy at the Sheriff's Department. And if anyone has not gone through that program, and I'm not sure, are we still doing that? Excellent program to see how the Sheriff's Department works from the inside out. Being a poll worker is an excellent way to do that. But I've also thought of having workshops, and we tried it one time. We opened up a workshop to the general public, everything you wanted to know about elections, but was afraid to ask. We advertised it, we sent flyers out, we told them what the criteria was going to be, the different things we were going to talk about. We set it up on a Saturday so that people who work could come and partake. We had various department heads that were going to talk about various aspects, whether it was an absentee ballot or how do I get registered type of thing, and no one showed up. No one showed up. So we're offering the things, but we've got to get some feedback from the general public. We've got to get some involvement back from the general public, and that's a very, very difficult thing for us to do.
Yeah, I have a very radical idea, and that is, and that is this. Sometimes we need to be radical. Sometimes we need to be conservative. But maybe if we have to find a way to motivate people to vote, and maybe, just maybe, if you started suspending their driver's license, if after 2 elections they failed to vote, we don't care how you vote. Wow. Think about it. Why not give people an incentive to get out there and vote?
We suspend their voter registration.
No. That doesn't do anything.
And we get in so much trouble for that.
But perhaps pinch them in a way that they may be a little bit more aware. You know what? This really does matter. Remember, driver's licenses is not a right, it's a privilege. And maybe you'll start losing some of your privileges if you don't start voting. We don't care how you vote, but vote. Maybe that might change it. And it'll certainly get their attention, won't it?
Yeah. It could be the other way around. It is giving incentives instead of not getting things away.
Sometimes you need to think radically.
You can't have everyone driving around without a license.
Right.
I think you'll see, you might see something different.
Well, that concludes our panel portion of our event this morning. I want to thank our panelists again. I'd like to thank Hodges University and Hispanic Institute, the News Press, for their help and their support in putting this together. And most of all, I'd like to thank, you for being here. You are, we are the community. This is a community that exists. There's 20,000 Hispanic registered voters in Lee County alone this year. That's enough to change a lot of races. There's more to come. I mean, this community is growing. And I know that, as Miguel said, we're preaching to the choir. This is the choir here. But what we need to do now is take these ideas, this information, this initiative to the community, and we each go out and get 2, 3, 4, 10 people. It's not that hard to register to vote, to actually cast a ballot. That number is going to be much more than the 4% or the 6% we had in the presidential preference primary. And for those of you that are worried that candidates don't listen, they will listen. So now's our chance. So, at this point, I'm going to invite David to come up, and he's going to introduce our film. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, every one of you. I appreciate it. As we set up this film, it'll be an opportunity for you to get some more coffee. We have tons of cake over there, so please and those things. This film was a documentary created by City View Project in collaboration with PBS, and it aired for the first time in mid-October. We have a representative from WCU-FM. We're thanking Luis Hernandez, and that's right. Normally, I know we don't recognize the media like that, but I've appreciated his efforts at making Hispanic issues in this community a big part of showing Gulf Coast Live at noon on WCU-FM. This is about the political trends, voting trends among Hispanics. And I don't know if any of you knew this, but John F. Kennedy was the first president to actually appeal directly to the Hispanic vote in 1960. So it goes way back. It's not just a 2000 or 2004 commitment. This goes way back, and you'll see an example of Mrs. Kennedy speaking in Spanish in a commercial to registered voters, particularly focused in Texas. But this talks about how, on the one hand, it's a desired demographic, and on the other hand, there's the feeling among experts such as cabinet secretaries, former cabinet secretaries, and so forth, that the vote is taken for granted. And here are some ways, here are some perspectives on why this is such an important vote in 2008. So please help yourself to some goodies while we set up the screen, and we'll be starting promptly in about 5 minutes.
They will translate. I wanted to know why they don't have a class. It will just give heads up.
I have a whole bunch of Spanish language flyers in my bag over there.
Because I only have seen them in English, but that is one of the biggest things that makes people not to go for it, especially not knowing what's in there.
Right.
What's the platform? What is the? I mean, what are you standing for?
Yeah, I think what we did is we translate. We put the flyer in Spanish. We didn't get enough of those out as much as I would like, but then we also had a Spanish language page on the website too. I think I'm the only candidate in this race that actually bothered to translate anything into Spanish. But the problem that we had, it was actually kind of across the board. It wasn't just with the Hispanic community. Was that because I'm a relative unknown quantity, it was really difficult for me to go out. Initially, what we wanted to do was like every group that we could possibly think of. We went out and we said, "Hey, I want to come talk to you. We want to videotape it. We want to get you more involved in the process." And we just got no response whatsoever. So, and then now, like at the end of the process, what's that?
I have good techniques for that. Do you have Spanish speakers in your?
We have a couple, yeah. So let me give you this, Steve, because what we're going to be doing here is after the election, I'm either going to make the same appeal as a candidate, or excuse me, as a congressman, or I'm going to go out. And now that we don't have because a lot of people, they were like, well, we're a 501c, wouldn't want to talk to you because you're a candidate. So now what I'm hoping that we can do, So now what I'm hoping we can do is I can just go out as a documentarian. And I want to kind of continue the process that we started, where I want to figure out a way, what they were talking about up here, to get the community more involved. Because, we've done probably about 24 of these forums now over the last couple of months. And every forum that we go to, if we have 30, 40 people, that's great. And usually out of those 30, 40 people, like 20 of them are candidates or the candidate's entourage. So we got to figure out a way that we can kind of sexy this up a little bit and actually go out and get people more directly engaged.
Because one of the things is that they might speak Spanish, but even the meaning it's so different. I mean, you can pass out the word, the information, but if you're not speaking the right language that they understand, they're never going to get the point of where you're going into it. I mean, you can be a translator, you can be an interpreter, but if you do not pass the exact idea that you're trying to, you lose it.
Oh, I know.
And you have to have, I mean, like the spirit, the everything that it takes to touch the Hispanics. It's so important. Otherwise,
I'm a Muslim and I'm involved in the Muslim community, and there it's, you know, we have like 3 or 4 major language groups. You know, when you go to the mosque, the majority in the mosques, at least the majority of the people there are immigrants. You know, and you have the Pakistanis and the Indians as one big group. We have the Iranians, and then we have the Arabs, and then we also have the North Africans. And so it's like multiplied by the same thing, because you go out there and you're trying to talk to them about the issues.
pass on the information.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the same issues too. It's, you know, it's fear of they come from countries that are very oppressive politically, so nobody actually wants to go out and get involved in the process. And it's like, no, you got to get out there. You know, you can't make your voice heard here.
Again, if they're not well informed, they will not go and say, okay, I'll help you.
Right, exactly.
Because if they do not know where you're standing at, and if the message is not clear enough for them in Spanish, in Arabic, and any other language, they will not go out and help you and support you. Because again, the message is not passing out across.
Right.
That's what it is about. And having the touch, be sensitive, be culturally sensitive to pass it out.
Right.
And that is very important.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that really frustrates me in this election. Thankfully, it's one of the positive side effects of all the bad things that happened with the economy, is it took the attention away from that immigration issue, because I was out there and I was trying, you could see there was fear with a lot of candidates. I think they were afraid that if they translated their stuff into Spanish, that the anti-immigration backlash would come back to haunt them on that. And so one positive aspect is we got away from this sort of blame the immigrants mentality that we were seeing like earlier in the year.
I think we need to focus more on the positive reinforcement than the negative reinforcement.
Exactly.
Because again, it's the, I don't want to say the ignorance, but lack of education or understanding. I mean, this country is built out of immigrants. Where your mom or your dad came from, or your grandma, or your great grandma.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even born here. My kids were born here, but not myself. But I mean, I love politics. So. But yeah, it is very important to be sensitive to the community, because otherwise, no matter how much prestige you have, how much money you have, if you do not have what it takes to pass on the information, be accurate, be sensitive, you're not going to be able to do much in the community. And if the purpose is to help the community and improve life for the citizens, I mean, you have to find it. Where? Even to the people who classify like the lowest, but it's not that they're the lowest, it's just that they cannot speak out because, again, they might think that, or they think that their voice is not heard. So you have to help them. You have to help them understand and pull them out and say, you know what, no, everybody's equal. Everybody, for me, you're not higher than me. I mean, I see you as any other human being. I mean, we have all the same needs, all the same desires. What improve our life? That's why we're here. We wanted to improve life. We didn't come here to steal nobody's. I mean, unfortunately, there's a little bit of everything out there. Yeah. But yeah, that's the main meaning. We come here to improve quality life in our countries, nothing else.
Oh, I know. And you know, my grandfather was from Sicily, and you know, so his generation, you know, it was the Italians and it was the Irish when they came over, you know, and you know, so we got over that, and then I became a Muslim. So now I'm seeing that in the Muslim community, you know, that they're getting that chunk of blame.
Have you been well accepted?
Oh yeah, in the Muslim, I have to say that, you know, overall, I mean, the community has been very welcoming, very accepting of the Muslim community. And this race, I'm so proud of this district. Never once was it raised as an issue, the fact that I was a Muslim in the election. I got a few emails here and there that were like, hey, we heard you're a Muslim, is that right? And I'm like, well, yeah, it says on my page, it says on my website, I talk about it all the time. But yeah, but that was it. So that's good. But yeah,
you're standing up for what you believe and who you are. That is the most important.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if you're pretending to be somebody that you're not, No, it is. That is not the game that we can play in the race.
It was nice talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let me see real quick. Let me see real quick.
American.
You did a great job up there.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you?
Did we meet last year at the Peace Fair?
Where?
It was at the Peace Fair in Fort Myers.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, Georgia Talk up there.
So you're
Running for Congress.
So I think this is quite significant.
how is the campaign doing?
It's doing well. All things considered, we'd have liked a lot more exposure. You know, it's interesting. You were talking about the difficulty with the Hispanic community getting the word out. You know, I'm actually a Muslim, so I work with the Muslim community, and we face the exact same issues in a lot of respects. You know, with
Where
the
are you
Muslims.
from?
I grew up here. I became a Muslim officially about 5-6 years ago, but I've been studying Islam for a long time before that. But
And you converted from?
my family was Catholic, but I never took communion, so I never had any real religion before I became a Muslim. It was basically my first religion. It just took me a while to get there, but.
Isn't it difficult in this race to say that you're Muslim?
You know, I am so proud of this district. No one has made an issue out of it. You know, every interview that I've went out to, I've said I'm a Muslim. It's never showed up in the papers.
Except for the sheriff, remember?
Well, yeah, that was. I gotta have a talk with Mike about that.
That doesn't count.
Yeah,
anything.
It's interesting. We were at last weekend. We were at an event that was put together for the Haitian American community in Lehigh, and it was so funny. Sonny Haas was there, and one of the Haitian ladies was saying, "Oh no, I'm not going to vote for him. He looks too much like Mike Scott," which is no reflection on Sonny at all. But you know, it puts that fear. You know, when people have that perception that someone's a racist.
And he's free to say whatever he wants, but not with uniform, and not with weapons. Not with any weapons.
Yeah,
that's not what taxes are for.
Exactly, and I know Mike, and the way that he's dealt with his office, he's definitely, in my experience, he hasn't had a problem with racism. But that one statement, you know, and actually having to go out there, and I think he needs to correct that. So,
so nice to meet you.
It was nice meeting you.
Okay, take care.
Thanks. Let's go ahead and let them watch their video. Get out of here. It should be good.
Yeah, we'll see, right?
I'll talk to you later.
See you, buddy.